The founders knew that freedom can only exist when power is kept under strict limits. Anything else to them was arbitrary power, how they defined tyranny. So if we ever want to see a real land of the free rather than the largest government in history, it's essential to understand the nature of power. So today I've got 8 foundational principles from the founders on power to help get us on the path to liberty. But first of all, welcome and thank you for joining me here today. My name is Michael Bolden with the 10th Amendment Center, and this is the Fast Friday edition of the show for June 14th, 2024. So let's get right to it. I want to start out with George Mason. Here he is writing for the Virginia Declaration of Rights, passed on June 12, 1776. He said, "All power is vested in and consequently derived from the people. Magistrates are their trustees and servants, and at all times amenable to them." Or Robert Livingston, the Chancellor. This is one of many, many quotes that we can have that have the same sentiment. All power is derived from the people. And that brings me to number 2, that power must have defined limits. Richard Henry Lee put it like this in a letter to Patrick Henry. "It must never be forgotten that the liberties of the people are not so safe under the gracious manner of government as by the limitation of power." So for the founding generation, it wasn't just about finding good people to wield power, because that's just relying on them to do the right thing. And understanding human nature, how corrupt human beings can be, this is a really, really bad choice. The Maryland farmer, writing in March of 1788, put it like this, and this really broadens it. "All human authority, however organized," so it doesn't matter what system you put together, or no system at all, however human authority is organized, it must have confined limits, or insolence and oppression will prove the offspring of its grandeur, and the difficulty, or rather impossibility, of escape prevents resistance. The Anti-Federalist Brutus, in his 4th essay, summed it up like this. "Power lodged in the hands of rulers, to be used at discretion, is almost always exercised to the oppression of the people." I mean, I know most of us would probably remove the word almost, but every now and then you get a good king that comes in and does the right thing. But again, as long as you rely on people to do the right thing, as Patrick Henry at one point asked in the Virginia Ratifying Convention, if you have a good senator, a good president, and good representatives, you'll be safe. But can that be expected from human nature? And the answer, of course, is no. So that brings me to number 3. Power not given is retained. And George Nicholas said it is a principle universally agreed upon that all powers not given are retained. And Edmund Randolph, same argument as well in the Virginia Ratifying Convention. All authority not given is retained by the people and may be resumed when perverted to their oppression. So it's not about convincing government to stop doing what government was never supposed to do. That brings me to number 4. Power always seeks to grow. Of course, we understand the old maxim that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, but somewhere between a little power and absolute power is a step-by-step constant growth of power in every situation. Abigail Adams said, "Power, whether vested in many or a few, is ever grasping." And if I can remember it properly, she basically said, and like the grave cries, "Give, give." It never, ever gets enough. The federal farmer, and I'm trying to cover Federalist and Anti-Federalist alike here to show the similarity in the views. Federal farmer, in his Anti-Federalist essay in October of 1787, said, "Men who govern will, in doubtful cases, construe laws and constitutions most favorably for increasing their own powers." This is an argument, of course, against having any phrase in a document that gives rules to government that is maybe too vague, easy for them to misconstrue, because federal farmers warning, if we understand human nature and we understand, just like Abigail Adams said, that power will always try to grow, if you give them a little wiggle room, they're definitely going to take it. And Samuel Adams said, this is one of my favorite puns in history, "Power is intoxicating, and men legally vested with it too often discover a disposition to make an ill use of it and an unwillingness to part with it." 5. Arbitrary power, just like I said at the outset, is tyranny. And arbitrary power is power exercised without right, without authority. Arbitrary power is one of the so-called grievances, the injuries and usurpations listed in the Declaration of Independence. So if government isn't supposed to be doing something and it does it anyways, that is arbitrary power. Thomas Paine put it like this: all delegated power is trust, and all assumed power is usurpation. Now, we know that the founding generation understood the term usurpation, or the phrase usurpation of power, as being a theft of power. When government goes beyond its limits, it is stealing power from the sovereignty of the people. And we'll get to that in just a moment here as well. Hear from John Locke in his 18th chapter discussing tyranny, of course, talking about this same thing. He said, "For wherever the power that is put in any hands for the government of the people, and the preservation of their properties is applied to other ends and made use of to impoverish, harass, subdue them to the arbitrary and irregular commands of those that have it, there it presently becomes tyranny, whether those that use it are one or many." It doesn't matter if you have a zillion representatives or if it's a single monarch. If they are doing stuff that they're not supposed to do, well, that is the definition of tyranny. And to be honest with you, it is tyranny even if you like how they wield that power, because someone else will have that power as well. I'll get to that as well in a moment. Here's St. George Tucker talking about arbitrary power and tyranny in his view of the Constitution of the United States. He said, "If in a limited government, the public functionaries exceed the limits which the Constitution prescribes to their powers," and that sounds like a description, just as a quick aside, that sounds like a description of what we experience 24/7, 365. A government that's supposed to be limited in its power. The public functionaries exceed the limits with which they've been prescribed in the Constitution constantly. So let's get back to that. If in a limited government, the public functionaries exceed the limits which the Constitution prescribes to their powers, every such act is an act of usurpation in the government, and as such, treason against the sovereignty of the people, which thus endeavor to be subverted and transferred to the usurpers. So it is a theft of power from the people, the source of the power that did not delegate it to them. And again, number 6, the power to do good is the power to do evil. So when someone usurps power and you like how they use it, you have to think about how the next dude is going to use it. And it doesn't, even if you like it in the short term, you should oppose it because someone else is going to have that same power and they're not going to be doing things the way you like it in the future, whether it's today or a long time in the future. The first Chief Justice put it this way, John Jay: "Remember that a power to do good always involves a power to do harm." And the third Chief Justice, Oliver Ellsworth, said, "A power of doing good always implies a power to do evil if the person or party be disposed." And these days, they are always disposed to do evil, virtually constantly. Next up, consolidation or total centralization of power is also how you define tyranny. Patrick Henry said, "Consolidation must end in the destruction of our liberties." So consolidating all the powers into one is the definition of despotism, and it will destroy liberty. Thomas Jefferson understood this by being a student of history as well. He said in a letter to Joseph C. Cabell, "What has destroyed liberty and the rights of man in every government which has ever existed under the sun? The generalizing and concentrating of all cares and powers into one body." And again, if we're not generalizing and consolidating all cares into one body under the largest government in history, well, I mean, I know there are these kind of subordinate governments, but they really don't act like states anymore. They act much more like oversized counties that are basically doing whatever the federal government tells them they have to do. Maybe we get a little bit of uppity here and there, which is a positive, but certainly the more that power is centralized, the more we can be guaranteed there will be no liberty today and in the long run. And number 8, this might be the most important, because putting it all together, we have to understand that power does not limit itself. If we know that power will always try to grow and expand, and power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, man, that we can't rely on the people with power to limit their own power. That is a really bad choice. And Thomas Jefferson, for example, in his Kentucky Resolutions of 1798, he said, if you allow people to make this decision over the limits of their own power for you, basically referencing the federal government, then you're basically under their discretion, unlimited. Their decision on what the extent of their own power will be. This is the states being united on a principle of unlimited submission to the general government, which he absolutely rejected. So power does not limit itself. Words on paper don't enforce themselves. They never did and never will. I covered that, the Constitution's actual enforcement mechanism, in what I think is maybe the most important episode I've done on this show. That'll be linked to in the show notes, along with all the other source documents that I'm citing for this episode, so you can read and learn more in context on your own time. Alan Mosley will get that organized over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty, and I'll get that published in a couple of hours after this live stream is done. But this is a pretty quick take today. If you want to help us reach and teach more people about these essential foundational principles and how to defend the Constitution and liberty when government refuses to do so, which is constantly, again, 24/7, 365, nothing helps us do this work more than the financial faith and support of our members. You can join us for as little as $2 a month over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. We also have annual, 5-year, and lifetime options. Or if you want to do a one-time pitch in to help us out, we could really use your support as we're ramping up to hit our 18-year anniversary later this month. Help us kick off the next 18 and build a stronger foundation than we've ever been able, to even imagine. And we're already there, but we've got a long way to go. Again, 10thamendmentcenter.com/donate if you want to pitch in one time as well. Again, I really appreciate you spending a little bit of your time with me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it made you think. I hope you learned something. That's more important than anything. I hope you have an awesome weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next week here on the Path to Liberty.